Welcome to the HMO Property Show, by investors for investors. Brought to you by the HMO Property Co, Australia's leaders in impact investing. Investments made with the intention to generate a measurable, beneficial social or environmental impact alongside a positive financial return. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host as always, Neil Gibb, and today I've got a guy that I met on a table at an awards event called the Business News 40 Under 40, and before I knew it, this guy was up and he got his award.
It surprised me. He was first up.
Mr. Cian Brennan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Cian from Quantum Contract Solutions, and in a nutshell, you review contracts for builders, developers, suppliers, make sure that everyone's getting a fair deal. Is that in a nutshell?
Yeah. Really, we're just to make it kind of fully simple. That's just the front end.
Yeah.
So that's, people have problems signing high risk contracts. They don't know what's in their contract. So we'll help them sign a low risk contract, right? Help them negotiate it in a way that can be accepted and reduce their risk. And then in post-award, after you've been awarded a contract, we'll help them manage the contract, submit their variations, submit their EOTs, comply with the contract. And at the end, and that, obviously the purpose of that is to make sure the cash flow is nice and high, make sure they get paid, right? You don't run out of cash flow. And at the end, we make sure that they don't have any disputes. So at the right time, they can jump on a call with one of our team and we can navigate them through a dispute or stop the dispute in the first place. So right people at the right time. So it's kind of like having a contracts administrator in your company. But instead of having one set of skill and paying a lot of money for a contracts administrator, you've got basically a contracts management team with different sets of skills that you use whenever you want.
Right. And although you're not really focused on working with, let's say, mum and dad investors that are working with builders, I still think that the people listening to this podcast are going to get a lot of value, because we're probably going to dig in and start talking about some of the things that you help builders, suppliers, developers negotiate on, and things that they need to look out for.
Yeah, 100%. So I would help mum and dad investors, but they're just too small.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line, right? So we only help bigger companies, but the problems are the exact same. There's only reason it's not valuable for my business, but so the value I hope I can give you and demonstrate is the exact same.
I think we will.
It's just that I can't do business with them because it's too small.
What's the sort of average contract value that you're working on?
Well, the businesses themselves, average contract, a couple of million up. Yeah, it does depend, but it's more of a volume game. So some companies will have, 500 grand project or something they're bidding for every single month, which is fine as well. Some maybe lower. Some guys might have 20, 30, 40 million jobs.
So who's your sort of ideal client that you'd work with?
My ideal client is a tier 2 contractor.
Yeah.
So a trade. Basically, someone who started off in the construction industry as a tradie, right? In some capacity, he may be a scaffolder. He grew his business, and then at some stage went bonkers, and he grew this big business.
Yep.
And then a lot of times they're family run. Sometimes they're 20, 30 years going, and then they've gone public a little bit or whatever, but they become more of a corporatized company. But that's the type of person I'm dealing with is that guy.
And who would they be working for? Who would they be contracting their services to?
The John Hollands of the world, CPBs.
Right, so we're talking big commercial, industrial sort of contractors.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sparkies, plumbers, all that type of stuff?
Well, the bigger versions of them. So electrical engineering companies, mechanical engineering companies. So yeah.
Yeah, oil and gas industry as well?
Every industry.
Beautiful. Nice, mate. And what are some of the big pitfalls that you see, high level, that occur over and over again, that could be easily avoided if people knew about them?
So the main one is a belief thing. So most people think, I can't negotiate my contract. Everyone thinks that, right? And the other thing that I think is, if I try to negotiate, they're going to give the work to somebody else. So they're the two beliefs that people have. When in reality, now I've been on the other side of the table. So the other guy on the other side of the table, his job is to award contracts. That's his job. All day, every day, he's trying to award a contract. I need to do this, I need to do this, whatever it happens to be. And so his KPI is to award a contract, right? And so if he goes to tender or goes out to bid, and then 5 tenders come in, and 4 have tried to negotiate a contract, as they would do, right? And 1 doesn't. He doesn't look at that one guy and go, "You're easy to deal with." He looks at him and this guy hasn't a clue what he's talking about. He's green.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the truth.
Yep.
So actually, when you do try to negotiate, you look more professional. It looks like you know what you're doing, and you probably win more tenders because of that. Right? We had one client who's a noise wall contractor. You know the noise walls inside of the... he said he was adamant that was going to happen. I was like, right, well, I'll tell you what. You've got this contract here with this other company that you've never dealt with before. How about I take that one and you just do what you want to do with your recurring clients? And so we did that, and the feedback from them was, "Oh, thank you for your nicely worded departures." Departures is the document that you try and negotiate. It gave us confidence that you knew what you were doing. Right? And
Perfect.
That's it.
Yeah.
But then you sign a better contract. And there's a few things by so what does signing a better contract mean? Okay, people also don't understand that. So, you know, Warren Buffett, famous investor, his investment philosophy is investing in good things with low downside. It's not something high risk, high reward. You're trying to reduce the downside of something happening. So something bad happening in construction, as we both know, happens all the time. So when that thing happens, you just want it to be a little blip. You don't want it to be a company ender. That's why that's important.
I definitely had a few things happen over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Construction industry.
And then so there's a few other little things in there as well, like so retention. If you negotiate your retention or your security, that's basically going to, if you negotiate that down by 5%, which is possible, that's a 5% increase in your cash flow on your project straight away.
Which is big when you're talking millions of dollars.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right? I'll give you another example. So sometimes defects liability period, right? It's the period after you've finished the work, right? That you have to come back to rectify defects. So you'll get your security back at the end of that period. So all the money they've held, typically 5%, they give you back at the end of that. Sometimes in the contract it'll say you won't get that back until the whole project is finished, not just your work, your whole project. So if the project is delayed, completely unrelated to you, you may never get it back. And then we can see what's happening now, and we chatted about this before. If a company goes bust during that time, you're never seeing that money again.
So there's obviously more than just price that we can negotiate on. You've mentioned a few there, retention. What other things can be negotiated on in a contract? What are the big things that you normally look and go, "Oh, we can definitely work on this"? Yeah,
the main thing is, how do I get out? How do I get out? It's all this the main focus. You can do whatever you want, right? But you need to be able to get out. So that's the termination clause. A lot of these contracts will have loads of ways for the client to terminate you, right? They can terminate you for convenience, right? For whatever reason, right? Or they can terminate you for default, which is you've not done what you promised you said you'd do, which is fair, right? But you can't terminate them sometimes, right? You can go outside of the contract, but within the contract, you can't terminate them. And so you need to have a way to terminate them. And what are we talking about in reality? What does that actually look like if they default? It's that they don't pay you. So imagine you're in a situation where they haven't paid you and you have to keep working. Because if you stop working, then you're defaulting on the contract. That happens all the time, and that's a cash flow issue. All of a sudden, they haven't paid you, and then you're into month 2 of them not paying you. What's going on here? Am I going to get paid? That's a big one.
As you're talking there, I'm trying to transfer this into the building industry, and it's like a HIA contract. Are you familiar with the HIA contract?
Yep.
So with let's take it back to a mum and dad investor, because that's generally the people that listen to this podcast, and they will generally be signing a HIA contract if they work with me or any other builder that's out there. So there's a few things that you touched on there. Obviously, the price. How do they get out of that contract? Once it's signed and executed by both parties, how can they get out of a HIA contract?
Depends if it's a standard. Is it like I would honestly in 4 years, the amount of Australian standard contracts, HIA contracts that are just as is, just as prescribed.
Yep.
I could count them on one hand, maybe
Really?
maybe 2 hands.
Yeah, right.
They're all amended in favour of whoever's giving it the
The
contract.
builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the HIA contract is weighted heavily in the benefit of the builder as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So what can the client or the person that's building the property, what are the things that they can look at in a HIA contract?
It'd be it's exactly the same things, right? So obviously the security, determination. The main one as well is just park the contract for a while. Is, do you know exactly what the scope of work is? Do you know, like, are you clear as day on the scope of work? Because if you're clear as day in the scope of work and all of the specs behind all of that, you're okay. It depends on if you've agreed a lump sum contract or rates as well, but you're okay. Like, most of the time you're okay. And so where in a post-award phase, where things happen, where things get etchy, is changes and delays. So that's the bit that you need to look at. What happens in this contract, because all contracts are going to be different, right? What happens in this contract if there's a change to the scope, or if there's a delay? They're the main things. Like, you got to run it out. You got to understand exactly what's going to happen there.
And again, let's look at what's happened over the last 2 years. Fair few delays, fair few variations that have been raised because materials would have been unavailable, and that ties in with the addenda and the specification for the property as well. But, you know, hindsight's probably a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So one of the things I see in the smaller contracts, because we'll help, you know, smaller, like, people all the time, right? It's just not really part of our business model. But is sometimes you'll get the builder, and they'll tell you, you know, oh, you know, this, I've had to change this thing. It's going to cost you an extra 20 grand, right? All the time. Or I've been delayed. It's going to be all the time. And you need to look at the contract and go, so I don't care. I'm not, like, I don't need to pay that. I get that you had an issue and then you had to spend 20 grand more, but you're the pro, you're the expert. That's not my fault, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. And a lot of times I've been delayed here because of this, and so, well, you know, that's I get it, but we signed up to this contract, so I'm just sticking to that.
And the contract is the main thing that they always go back to.
Always goes back to the contract.
Yeah.
And one of the philosophies we you know, as part of our service, we do a lot of training with our clients as well to give them an overall philosophy. And so I know you're from England?
Yep.
Okay. So you know Alex Ferguson?
Yes, one of the greatest managers of all time.
Okay, great. I don't have to introduce him, right? So he had a term called squeaky bum time.
Yes.
Right? Squeaky bum time is you're sitting on the edge of a seat in a stadium and you're shifting around because it's getting close to the edge, right? And it makes a squeaky sound. And so squeaky bum time is the last quarter of a construction project. So when we're talking about construction in general, we can have all the little clauses and all of the major things and the changes that are going on. If you just park that for a second, we just look at it. If there's going to be a dispute, if there's going to be a problem, it's going to be in that last quarter. Always, right? And so what people normally do is they don't do any contractual stuff. They don't look at the contract until they get into that fourth quarter and there's a problem. That's when they look at it, right? Too late. And also, if you think about the relationship, when you've gone through the whole relationship, you've been, you know, the first quarter, I'm just, oh, it's great, you know, we're all friends here, you know, and it's great, a new project, exciting. Second quarter, it's kind of the same, we're making progress. Third quarter, there's problems here, I'm getting a bit concerned. And if at four quarters, all of a sudden, now we're on the contract and everyone, and now what that kills a relationship because people suddenly turn.
Yep.
Whereas if you start off, you know, oh, no, contract is contract, and then you're submitting whatever you're doing. If you have to submit paperwork, it's all based on the contract the whole way through. Everyone knows exactly where we stand, and then that's the way to do it. And then what happens is when the fourth quarter comes along, right, squeaky bum time, you're ready, you're prepared, you've done all the right stuff. Yeah.
Have you got a legal background? How did you get into this?
So my original, I'll go way back. Yeah. You read it right? Way back. Back to Galway. So my granddad owned a construction company called Brennan Construction. And there's actually a hotel there. No, it's a restaurant, right? Called Brennan's Yard, which is where his yard was. And when he died, there was the newspaper article said, "The man who built Galway." And so I always wanted to go construction because of that, right? And there's a very funny story of me working on a building site when I was 13. And my parents came around. They just dropped us off, right? Me and my cousin, Brian. They dropped us off and they drove by later in the week just to check how we're going. We're both driving dumpers. Just, living there like, oh, whatever. Right? All we were missing was a cigarette hanging out of our mouth, right? So anyway, the advice to me was don't be a builder. Don't be a contractor. It's a tough game. So you're better off going client side. And so I got a degree in construction economics and management, and then went on to masters in engineering. So I'm very construction heavy. Right? I understand construction less, and then over time I got into the contract side by experience. Yep. But when I was on the client side, I could see all of these contractors going out of business. It was actually me rejecting invoice. It was me rejecting variations. It was me saying no. And you could see that, what they were submitting was just, they didn't understand. They just hadn't a clue how the system worked in the big companies. They didn't understand it, and that was what was putting them out of business all the time. Like, it was a crazy amount of companies going out of business. So eventually that caught up with me. Didn't feel good about it. But I knew the inside system of these places. I know what they will accept, what they won't accept. I know how to navigate the system. So that's how I started my business, as in I go and help these guys navigate the system so then they get a great result and, go forward that way.
And did you start that back in Ireland, or did you start that here?
Started that here.
Yeah, cool. When did you start it up?
2019.
Beautiful. How big's your team now?
25.
Wow. Big growth, eh?
Big growth, yeah. So we're in Australia, New Zealand and the US.
So it's fair to say, oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice one. So it's fair to say there's quite a bit of demand out there for people to review contracts and make sure that they're not getting...
Yeah.
That they're all getting a fair deal.
For sure. I mean, look, most of these companies are big enough that they need this support.
Yeah.
But not big enough to hire like someone in-house full-time, nor do they want to.
Yeah, right. And what sort of things do you need to stay on top of to be on top of this role? Is there any sort of industry standard or any new regulations that come out that you need to be aware of when you're reviewing contracts?
Depends on the size of the company, but a lot of times there's Security Payments Acts in the various different states, and that's the avenue for disputes. So that's the main thing. But most of this stuff, we always say we don't do a legal dispute. We don't do a legal review. It's not legal at all, right? We don't care about changing words for the sake of it. All we care about is saving you money and reducing your risk. We call it a commercial review, right? And because we like some stuff, we'll say to our client, hey, we know John Holland, for example, won't accept this. We know every time we've tried, they won't accept it. So there's actually no point even trying, right? It's better off to put a document that is much smaller, and the things that we're asking for, we know that they move on and you get a better result.
Yeah, cool. Who was the first client you worked for when you first set your business up? And what did you learn from that first one? Because there's always a lot of value in that first one.
Yeah. So I think it is a better story on that particular one. So I just wanted to do the contracts management side as the business. That was all we were doing because that's how I felt I could help the most.
Yeah.
And I went into a business and they go, "Can you do a contract review?" And I was like, "Yep."
I think it's Richard Branson where he says, like, if someone offers you something, a good opportunity to say yes and work out how we do it later.
Yeah. So I just and then that actually didn't come off that one. But I was like, okay, this is something people want. So let's develop the system. So we developed the system, and then I got another company in first one was in Brisbane, a company called Benchmark Scaffolding, and I charged them not very much money. A lot of output, gave them a load of value, like tons of value. They're still a client to this day. Yeah. Still a client to this day, which is fantastic. And then a company called Caledonia Scaffolding was our first big client that we had here.
A lot of scaffolders.
Yeah, a lot of scaffolders. Actually, there is a lot of scaffolders. A lot of scaffolding companies, civil companies, steel fabricators. Yeah. Guys are worried about spending a lot of money on stuff.
And the scaffolding companies and civil companies, would they have a contract per project?
The way we price our services is, how many tenders do you have a month? And then we'll average it out over the year. I can go up or down. We don't do whatever. And then how many PMs have you got? Right. And we'll be that PM's. We'll do all the paperwork for that PM. Yeah, right. So he just rings us and sends in whatever he needs.
So a lot of this kind of variance in. How do you build a team around that? So if you've got the skill set, how do you put that through to? We've got 25 people. How do you train? How do you get that data and skill set out of your mind into a process that other people can follow?
So we use we've got a lot of tech as well that helps us, but we use various different things. We use a software called Process Street, where we've procedurized the whole thing, right? So you can go in, you can run a process, and it'll tell you step by step exactly what you need to do. We run, we get people that are skilled in the industry anyway, but I run them through a 12-week certification when they first start, so that at the end of that, they know, not only they already know stuff, but they know how I want it done and what the best success metrics are, which I think is really valuable to them, because then they can leave my company down the line and take that skill set and be very valuable to another company.
And that's a good thing. And again, I think it's Richard Branson where it says, what if we train these people and they leave? And he says, what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Yeah, brilliant.
Got some good nuggets out, Ricky.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, it's grown quite fast, hasn't it? What are you excited about today? What's happening in the business that really excites you, and what are you looking forward to over the next 2 or 3 years?
So our vision. So we got 90 clients. Our vision is to help 1,000 clients globally. Yeah. 1,000 construction companies. Now, to put a bit of anger in some people, right? And as I often do this with my team. I'm not going to rag on John Holland in case someone hears it and comes after me, right? But I am. So those level of companies, right? They're not actually construction companies; they're finance companies, right? So how do they make money? They'll let's just say you've got the government wants to build a bridge. So they want to build a bridge. They go out to tender and they award it to someone like John Holland or CPB or main contractor. You can use this analogy for anything, right? So they get it and they get a big loan to fund it, and then they make the money from the delta of that loan and how much they get paid by the client, and then they subcontract out all the work to the clients. What they do is they push all the risk down, and they often don't pay people. They don't do stuff. So you got these mom and pop businesses that have grown and they gotten bigger, they gotten more successful, and they're being like bullied because they don't have the expertise. They're concentrating in their head on just deliver the project best I can. Yeah,
because that's what they know.
That's what they know. Yeah. And if I do a good job, all things will. But they don't know how to deliver commercially, contractually, and they end up getting done time and time again.
Whilst we're kind of on the construction industry as well, so obviously you're in the thick of it. You're working with a lot of contractors, builders, developers, stuff like that. What have you seen in the industry over the last 2 years, and what are you seeing now? Is it starting to kind of fix itself up, or are we still in a bit of trouble?
Honestly, I think we're in a bit of trouble.
Still?
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of trouble.
Okay.
It is a very tough industry for the construction industry. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is during COVID, the government pumped a lot of money into the construction industry. People won a lot of projects kicked off. And to make it short, a lot of people can't deliver on their promises because they can't get materials and they can't get people. And because of that, they're going out of business.
Yep.
Right? I think, there's an example of you're trying to, let's say you have to supply glass somehow. And you spend a lot of money getting that glass, and then it doesn't arrive for months, and you're massively late on your project. And you've spent that money, but you definitely haven't got paid for that money. It's hurting.
And your staff are still getting paid every month.
For sure. Money going out, cash flow is getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
So a lot of people where that's not working out for them. Also, some people have won these projects on rates, and now they're delayed significantly. And those original rates that they are tied to now, like, what's inflation? Like how much?
It's only 7% or something.
So, whatever it is. Yeah. Like this is so now. Well, let's just say 7% in the last year, or whatever it is. It's the bottom line is they can no longer make a profit on those original rates that they're being held to.
Yeah. I think we called it a profitless boom.
A profitless boom, yeah, exactly.
Everyone's like manic, but no one's really making any money because like the increases are just outweighing what we charge for them.
Exactly, yeah.
What have you seen in the way of, are you seeing suppliers struggling and going out of business as well as just builders? Or are we seeing builders still going out of business as well?
Honestly, it predominantly would be builders.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be builders, yeah.
And what do you think a client should be looking for and our investor should be looking for? If they're thinking of build a house now, what are the top 5 things you should look for in a builder?
In a builder,
Yeah.
you really want to look at their solvency.
How do they do that?
There's a... Well, they could come to us, but no, if they want to do it on their own, there's stuff like Credit Watch.
Yeah.
You got to find out, have they been in court? Have they, do they have any judgments against them? Have they not paid anybody? You need to understand that information. It's really important, because right now it's more like it's more important than ever, right? So I'd say the biggest risk is, can this builder stay alive for the duration of my project? So there's a bit of, if someone's a bit more expensive, but they've got a good history and they've got a good business, that's probably more valuable these days over someone who's pitching you low. I'd say that's probably the best advice I could give, is to really, if someone's coming low with a price to you at the moment, you'd step back and think about, maybe that's not, maybe it's worth the money now, but if they go out of business, I'm in trouble. Interesting.
So all the things that you mentioned there, they can be done online themselves. Or would you review a $400,000 bill contract for an investor, for instance?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Would it be worth, would they see the worth in that, do you think? Obviously.
For sure.
No, don't worry about it.
I mean, right now, like, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think so, because it's just the market. It is the market. And also, it pays to understand these things, right? So if you're just signing a contract, I mean, we all do it. Like, how many Facebook contracts have we, things that we checked that we have no idea what it is.
True.
But ultimately, there's the impact of them doesn't really affect your bottom line. When it really does affect your bottom line and your cash flow and your whatever, ultimately on your investment, how is that going to impact the returns on your investment? Obviously, it is. You need to know.
So if anyone needs you to do some DD on a builder, on a build contract, how do they contact you?
Just go. Well, first of all, don't take my word for it. Go to quantumcontractsolutions.com. There's a case study. Check the case study out. And then if you want to book in a call, you can do that there too.
Beautiful. So let's talk about coaches and mentors, because I always like to find out a little bit more about how you've got to where you are, who's give you a helping hand and stuff like that. So who would you give credit to when it comes to coaches and mentors?
Oh, wow. This is probably one of my favourite topics. Have you got, how long have we got on this podcast? This is going to go.
It could be a podcast just on its own, couldn't it?
Yeah. So same again, I'm all for spending an absolute fortune on mentors, because the amount of money that you save is phenomenal. Yeah. Phenomenal. So my first mentor was a guy called Alan Dibb. So Alan Dibb wrote a book called The One Page Marketing Plan. Read the book, loved it, and I just went to him directly to show us how. So he showed us the business model, so you can make a mistake in business where you start off and you're doing the wrong thing. And that can hurt you, right? Warren Buffett says, there's no point paddling hard if you're in the wrong boat, right? So you got to choose the right boat. So he helped me choose the right boat, which is fantastic. And then just general business principles, how to set up, like I think I'd tried to start businesses before my own, and spend loads of time on the logo, and
as you do.
Yeah, as you do, and spend whereas just no, don't spend time on that. Spend time on this. Spend time on this. Spend time on this. So Alan was fantastic. I then went to a company in Brisbane called the Influencer Project. So the guy Rana there runs that, and he showed me how to a really fantastic LinkedIn strategy, which showed us basically brought in leads and still bringing us in 15-20 leads a week.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, they're all semi-interested. They're not like diehards.
Yeah.
And so that's been fantastic. And then there's a guy called Alex Hermosi. I don't know, you follow him online.
Yeah.
He's absolutely fantastic. So
with the big handlebar mustache.
Mustache.
Yeah.
So he talks a lot about skills, character traits, and beliefs. And I think that's probably the single biggest thing that's helped me, in that I had already acquired a lot of the skills. I knew how to market. I knew how to sell. I knew how to do. I knew, all the skills. I had them, right? But the next level of that was why wasn't I making success? Well, I didn't have the character traits to, put those skills to use. Couldn't turn up and do it every single day, like make 80, 90 calls every single day, cold calling people. Actually, at that 40 under 40, there was a guy who won the 40 under 40 as well. He's a construction company in the Northwest, in the Pilbara. And when he came up to me, he goes, I remember you cold called me when you were first starting. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's a real nice moment for me, because the amount of cold calls I made, the amount of calls I made every day, and when you get into that routine of and then the next one is beliefs, but I'm the type of person who does that stuff, then it makes a huge difference.
Did you sign him back up at the awards?
No, I didn't. I felt it might be a bit inappropriate to start lobbying for that, but you've reminded me now.
Mate, it's been a pleasure catching up with you today. I'm glad we did this. I'd like to finish off on a favourite quote. So what's your most favourite quote that you like?
So that it's kind of come from me. One that I have right now, and it's on my wall, is repeat successful actions.
Perfect. Simple as that.
Simple, yeah.
Been quite a few quotes in this podcast.
There has, yeah. I mean, Richard Branson's featured a few times.
Cian, it's been a pleasure catching up with you, mate. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Absolutely loved it. Take it easy.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you stay up to date with all the cash flow positive property updates.